Hey there, amazing listeners. Before we dive into today's episode, I've got a bit more housekeeping. If you love the show as much as we love making it, please hit that follow button. And if you're feeling extra generous, drop us a like, leave a comment, or share an episode. We still find that good old word of mouth is the best way to get the show out there. So please tell your friends, tell your colleagues, tell your dog, or for our demographic, tell your fellow residents in the old folks' home. Your support helps us keep the conversation going, brings more awesome content your way, and allows us to attract some fab guests. So thanks as always for listening. For now, get comfy, get cozy, and let's get into it.
Let's start a podcast about our mental health for no good reason why. Let's call it Mind Cake.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another slice of Mind Cake.
Mind Cake.
With him,
Lee Crompton. And him.
Paul Beeson.
Hello.
Hello, friend. How are you doing?
I'm not bad, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
How itchy is the tash?
It's very itchy. It's at that horrible length where it's not stubble, but it's not quite bushy enough. It's the sort of mid-period.
I don't know whether this will mean anything to you, but it's a bit Merv the Swerve.
Merv the Swerve.
Mm.
Is this one of your reference for the kids? Is that today's one, is it?
Merv the Swerve, he was a bit of a tenuous link there with an upcoming guest, but he was an Australian cricketer.
Oh, okay.
But seeing as you don't know who he is,
no.
Take it from me, it's a bit Merv the Swerve.
Okay. Well,
it's looking quite bushy.
Thank you. It's getting there. It's getting there. It'll be bushier by the time, I'm on stage.
Absolument, Rodney. Absolument.
How have you been since we last chatted?
All right. I've been very busy with Mind Cake.
You have?
Trying to pull in the punters and pull in the guests and tell everybody about it. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good fun. I've enjoyed it. And yes, obviously got a chat with Arthur Smith.
Yeah. That was well, perhaps we can get into that a bit more after the interview, but I have a question for you.
Okay. I think if it's the question I think it is, it might be quite a long answer.
Okay.
You might have to pull out the anecdote corner jingle.
God, it's been a while.
Well, there's so many anecdotes, I've just not bothered playing the jingle, to be fair.
Yeah, because you're basically just one walking, talking anecdote, aren't you?
Well, if you think at the last episode, the Cara debrief, that was just basically one long anecdote, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
This week, I shall mostly be doing anecdotes about spirit guides.
Have we had any? I'll tell you what.
We'll do that after. This is the short version, Paul. This is the short version. We have to get our heads into the. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get straight into Arthur Smith.
Let's do it. So this week we are speaking to comedian, writer, all-round grumpy old man, probably best known as the backwards bar manager in Red Dwarf.
Oh, yeah.
It's Arthur Smith. How are you?
I'm just be here, Lee. Yeah, I'm up in the Edinburgh Fringe at the moment. So here I am again. I've been up here every year, not every year, but most years since 1977.
1977. That was going to be one of my first questions. You've been part of the furniture up there since 1977.
Yeah. I came up with a review group. There were 5 of us from a university review doing sort of sketches and songs and stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's all changed a bit since then. And now I'm here reviving a double act. So I was in with Phil Nice, who's just next door at the moment. Because we were in a double act for a bit, and then essentially I call it's a bit like Waiting for Godot meets Morecambe and Wise.
Okay. Well, she'll have to come over and see you again, because I say that I have met you once after your show a few years ago now. I said it was the Pissed Up Chat show.
I had
Go on, sorry.
drunk and I was sober, but I discovered, to be honest, drunk people are often quite boring.
I was going to say, didn't have to take a breathalyzer test as part of the show.
Yeah, I made them take a breathalyzer test to make sure they were pissed, which was quite fun. And I also got them to try and say, "The Leith police dismisseth us." Can you say that?
No, I'm not even going to try.
We realised. I was interested in the idea that of in vino veritas, in wine truth. People tell the truth when they're drunk, but actually they were mostly quite either very silent or just very boring and repetitive.
You weren't drunk though, were you? Because you gave up the booze. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah. In 2000 and what year was it? 2001. I was drinking I wasn't a kind of vodka on the cornflakes man, but I was drinking a lot, and I suddenly got this terrible pain one night, and then I went to the hospital, and then I ended up in intensive care, and I had a thing called acute necrotizing pancreatitis, which doesn't sound very nice, and actually I can reveal isn't, and it was really painful. And I was more likely to die than live at one point. And so when I left hospital finally through the unfortunately named patient's discharge lounge, I realised that I had two things. One, that I needed to stop drinking, and two, I really like morphine.
It's good stuff, isn't it? I've had a bit of it myself now and again.
No, I've not had any for years now. You can't really just go and buy it in the shop anymore.
No,
I think you used to in the 1920s or something.
Yeah, sorry. I should say that under hospital conditions, I've had morphine. I don't just yeah. So do you feel that other than obviously stopping drinking? I mean, something I talk about is after having that kind of whatever you want to call it, wake up call. Do you feel that you changed as a person, or you changed things about your life following that?
Yeah, I did. I did stop drinking, although occasionally I allow myself a glass of red these days, because that was 23 years ago, and apparently it's all right if I have the odd glass now. But I haven't been drunk for 25 years. I can't remember what it's like to have a hangover. I did. I sobered up, and I managed to stop smoking for a bit, although I'm afraid I've fallen off that wagon. And I just sort of led a much more healthy life for a long time, and and it made a big difference. And to be honest, it made me a better comedian in a way, I think, because it's being a comedian. It's not like most jobs, you don't go to most jobs and everyone there's half pissed. Whereas as a comedian, and especially when I used to do the Comedy Store in the West End in London, there were two shows a night, and the first one started at 8 and the second one didn't start till midnight. Right. So obviously, in the midnight show, nearly everyone was drunk. Yeah. So which is not, most people's jobs don't involve dealing with, 200 drunk people. And I always remember, someone said that you're all right to have a drink yourself. You should be always 1 pint less pissed than the average member of the audience.
That was the benchmark.
Yeah. They were pretty wild times.
I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, was that sort of the culture? Do you think that back in the day that did you used to go out on a few benders and that was kind of the norm?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, and also back in those days, people used to, have a proper lunch with half a bottle of wine as well. Whereas, lunch now is just nibbling a sandwich at your computer.
Other than nibbling a sandwich at your computer, I mean, obviously, if I'm trying to work out in my head, that's 40 odd years you've been going to Edinburgh. What do you think's changed the most about the festival in the last, 4 decades, nearly 5 decades?
Well, there's a lot that's changed. It's bigger even. It was big then, but it's pretty much the biggest festival in the world now. It's also, and back then as well, there was no real stand-up comedy. It was just university review groups like we were. But now it's got a stand-up comedy, and there's a lot of people talking about their mental health problems, It's more personal, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's also, there's the free fringe. So one of the great things about the Edinburgh Festival, I think, is that anyone can have a go. Anyone come up here, find a little room to do a show. Most festivals, you're invited to go, and it's only professionals. Whereas it's a great playground of the imagination for when you're starting out. It's always a big thing for a comedian. The first time you do an hour's show at Edinburgh is a kind of mark, a milestone along your way as a comedian.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think I'm right in saying that there's some people are literally gigging in somebody's front room.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I did one in someone's front room. So I did one this sounds a bit silly, in a telephone box once.
Was it a big crowd for that?
No, I mean, I can't quite remember how it works. I think people were outside or something, but yeah. And I do this late night tour of the Royal Mile that starts at 1 a.m. And everyone used to be drunk on that. So I'm not anymore, but they will be drunk. I do it this year on Saturday week.
You run it. You take it.
Yeah. I invented it. So I mean, in its big days, back about 15 years ago, I'd have more than 15 years ago, I'd have 200 people would turn up.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, and we used to do all sorts of wild stuff, and I got arrested once.
You got arrested?
Yeah, well, yeah, because there was a particular comedian whose name was Malcolm Hardy, also a bit of a boozer. He drowned in the River Thames about 20 years ago. He always used to call the police. I didn't know this at the time, at the start of it. So the police would always turn up, and I never quite knew why, because we weren't really doing much that was bad, other than sort of making a lot of noise. And there was a bit of nudity sometimes, because I used to take their clothes off and sing Scotland the Brave and that sort of thing. But at the end of one of them, I got arrested and charged with breach of the peace and possession of a megaphone. So I'm quite proud to have been arrested at the end of a gig as me and Lenny Bruce. That's about it, I think.
Well, that is quite the accolade.
Yeah, I was quite proud of it in a way. And in the end, I got a kind of £100 fine or something, and I offered to pay it then, and they said they'd send me a letter, but they never did. So I think technically I'm still a wanted man in Edinburgh.
It's a wonder you show your face in Edinburgh again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wanted posters all around the city.
Yeah. No, I think they seem to have forgotten about it now. And anyway, the other time I was arrested, they looked me up and said, "Is your father a police officer?" And I said, "Yes." And they said,
wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
He was, yeah.
They off because of that. But I'm not planning to get arrested anymore, and I don't really do much to get arrested these days. I stopped doing the drugs and the drink, and so I'm now pretty much fairly honourable.
Didn't I read somewhere, and I can't remember what the bet was, but you lost a bet and had to sort of nudity, you had to sort of bear all. Oh yeah, where was that?
Yeah, that was with Tony Hawk's, who's a comedian.
Oh yes, he did the stutter rap.
Oh yeah, well remembered. Yeah. And I did a show with him once called, because he plays the piano, I did a show called Arthur Smith Sings Andy Williams.
Right.
But it was a bit of a joke show. I mean, I wasn't really doing much Andy Williams. It was more of a kind of piece about this Dadaist figure I was a bit obsessed with. But anyway, he came round to watch, was it England v Moldova at football at my house? This is I can't remember, this is ages ago. And he's a very keen tennis player. And I said to him, yeah, you're good at tennis, Tony, but I bet you couldn't beat this Moldovan football team, because they're all like professional athletes. He said, I bet I could. And so we had this bet where the idea was that the loser would have to take his clothes off and sing the Moldovan national anthem outside Boots in Balham in South London, where I live. And sure enough, Tony actually went off and found all these Moldovan footballers and played every one of them at tennis and managed to beat them all. So, yeah, I sing the Moldovan national anthem naked outside Woolworths as it was then.
Woolworths.
But pleasingly, no one arrested me for that one, for public nudity.
It's surprising, really, you got away with that. I mean, was there much of a crowd for that, Arthur? Did you bring in many punters for that?
Well, there were about 50. And if there's anyone watching or listening to this who was there that day, I'd like to point out it was quite a cold March morning, all right.
Everything was stacked against you.
Yeah, yeah. But, I paid my part of the bill.
Yeah.
And
good.
I did sing the Moldovan national anthem, which I can't remember now. But
I know. I wouldn't imagine it's the sort of thing that, is trips off the tongue.
No, it's long forgotten now. And I did go back to Moldova eventually. Funny enough, it's quite a sort of poor place. I remember.
Is it? I've not been.
Yeah, I know there, and I once went to Belarus. That was even worse with Miriam Margolyes.
Oh, okay. I bet that was an interesting trip.
Oh yeah. Oh, she is great, Miriam. You can't go wrong with Miriam. She's doing a show up here in Edinburgh about Dickens, I believe.
Is she?
Yeah, I'm hoping to go and see it sometime.
I should maybe pop across because I actually had a screenplay. I work in construction, but I actually had a screenplay optioned, and we had to come up with our dream cast. And Miriam Margolyes was one of the characters. You obviously won't know this, but if I had my choice, she was going to play one of the characters in a dark comedy I'd written.
Oh, you should go and put it to her. You never know.
I might do.
Yeah, and I gather a Dickens show is brilliant, as it would be.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Well, do you know what? I'm gonna come over to Edinburgh, see if I can catch up with you, and go and see Miriam, and take my script.
Yeah, good idea.
Before we get any further, because I haven't actually asked a proper question yet. What is your show called this year?
It's called Oof, which is the noise you make when you get old and you have to stand up.
Yes.
And it's me and my old double act partner Phil. We meet on a bench in a park, but at that point you don't realise we know each other. We don't seem to remember each other, but then we remember each other, start reminiscing, and then there's a big sort of fight, and then we get together and make up at the end. It's sort of the progress of it. But obviously it's full of gags, some very old and some more modern.
Brilliant. Well, I was going to say that actually I co-host this with the co-host is Paul Beeson, and he can't make it tonight because he's rehearsing his show in Edinburgh. He's doing This Is Our Story, I think it's called, and it's about 150 years history of Heart Midlothian Football Club.
Oh.
And they're doing it at I forget the name of the stadium, he'll tell me off, but they're doing it at the Hearts Stadium.
Oh, that's the Edinburgh team, isn't it?
Yes. Well, one of them. Let's see, in case we're going to do it, because Hibs is the other Edinburgh team. So let's not get into sticky waters there. But yes, so they built the set and what have you at the ground, and then they had like a pre-festival thing, but then had to dismantle it all because they were playing Rangers. And then after the Rangers game, which I think was the weekend, they've had to build it all up again, and they've now got another run. So yeah, he's doing a show in Edinburgh at the moment. So yeah. Ah, the great outdoors. What could be better for your mental health than going out into nature and getting some fresh air? Thank you for that. And if you're planning a visit to Loch Lomond, walking the West Highland Way, or just enjoying the stunning Scottish landscape, why not pop into the Button Bend Cafe in the heart of Crompton for a bit of a pit stop? They offer everything from hearty breakfast to delicious evening meals to homemade treats, most of which I've sampled myself and can wholeheartedly vouch for. The Button Bend is family run, fully licensed and packed with charm, an ideal spot to relax and recharge. Just a stone's throw from Loch Lomond, Drimmen and the Devil's Pulpit. Visit the Button Bend in Crompton or visit www.thebuttonben.co. We'll put a link in the link tree. Well, shall I ask my first proper question?
If you want.
Well, I was going to say that your comedy often blends humour with a more reflective theme.
Mm.
And how important is it for you to address serious topics like mental health in your comedy?
Well, I think, I mean, I've had some mental health problems over the years, and in a way, humour and, I mean, they kind of go together a little bit, I think, because it's one way of coping, obviously, with sadness or depression is to find the laughs within it. And as you know, and making a room full of people laugh is very good for your mental health, I would say. It's a really wonderful feeling when you come off stage and you've had an audience laughing and sharing sadnesses often, but also because life is ridiculous. And we say this in the show, the realization that life is absurd should not be an end but a beginning.
Mm.
And the absurdity of being alive is funny.
It is, and I get that, and I think there's a relationship between, like I say, because there's a lot of, whether it's a cliche or not, I don't know, but there is a lot of comedians who are, struggle with their mental health, and
Yeah.
I wonder if that's, well, it'd be interesting to get your view on this in terms of, is it because it's a solitary affair? Comedians, obviously you've got a writing partner at the minute and you've got, a double act. But for some comedians, obviously it's you're on your own. Is it the fear of, going out there and people not laughing? Is it the euphoria of having that, being in that moment and making people laugh, and then kind of you go back to your dressing room afterwards where it's just you and having that kind of down moment? I mean, I suppose it's a funny, like you say, two-thirds of your audience are pissed half the time. It's a funny industry to work in.
Yeah, it is. And it's, I mean, people become comedians partly, I think, because it's a way of, laughter, as Victor Borge said, laughter is the shortest distance between two people.
Mm-hmm.
And most comedians start out because as a way of making themselves comprehensible or popular with other people. Because one way of making yourself popular or making yourself acceptable is to make other people laugh. So if you have other problems, laughter is your way through.
Mm.
And yeah, it's a very common theme now. Lots and lots of comedians do shows about their mental health or how they got through it or how they cope with it. The tears of a clown, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there is that. I mean, I wouldn't do stand up, but I mean, I could certainly put a lot of what's happened to me over the last 4 years into a script, because in retrospect, there's some really funny moments, some dark funny moments, but funny moments. And people say to me, "Where'd you get your ideas?" I'm like, it's so fucking easy, because you just literally have to half open your eyes, and it's everywhere. Because, like I say, there's absurdity literally everywhere.
Yeah, and I suppose if you feel that your death is coming soon, then you want to kind of get more laughs as you go along. You want to accumulate as many as possible, as many memorable moments, and memorable moments often are ones where unexpectedly laughter reveals itself and comes shooting out of you.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's that thing, because you kind of, and as you have been sort of, touched by your own mortality, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think there is an element of, not fuck it, you still got to have a job and pay the mortgage and what have you. But so, for example, I don't know if you mentioned, I had Alistair Campbell on the podcast.
Yeah.
And that was a moment of going, fuck it, what have I got to lose? Stuck my hand up. He was doing a speech at after dinner speech at some conference. So I was down at London, and he did a Q&A at the end, and you just stuck your hand up and go, well, the worst thing you can say is no. And people go, oh, you put your hand up, that's very ballsy. I'm like, well, not really. I mean, the worst you can say is no. And like I say, I'm very tempted to just actually go, fuck it, just get on a train and go to see Mariam and just see if I can catch 5 minutes with her. What have you got to lose?
And she's such fun. I think she'd probably agree with it. Funnily enough, there was a point at which I was going to do a podcast with her.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know what happened. Radio 4 weren't up for it, strangely. But where I was going to confront Miriam with lots of problems or questions, and knowing that she'd answer them always utterly honestly, and always with a real sense of humour.
Yeah.
Although, funny enough, I've now got another possible thing in, which is related to yours in a way. It's called 6 Moments I Escaped Death, and where I'm going to interview people about times where they nearly died, whether it was getting run over by a bus or getting some terrible illness or falling off a wall, or I mean, because I've had a few incidents like that, and obviously you're coping with one now.
Have you got is that an invite then, or have you got your 6 people?
No, it's still at the sort of planning stage.
Oh, is it? Okay, well, count me in.
Yeah. All right, yeah. What have you learned then, would you say, Lee, a bit about, since you've been given this diagnosis?
I think it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you go, well, listen, it is like, I think even more so now, it feels like sand dripping through your fingers, because you realize how precious time is and how things can change on a dime. And the norm that you took one day is not necessarily, you have that, you go and see the doctor, he tells you the news, and then all of a sudden, your whole world is completely different. So on the one hand, I used a thing earlier that the thing that I wanted to do the most was see my kids grow up, and that's the thing that the most gut wrenching thing that I felt at the time was the fact that my youngest daughter was 8 months old and I wasn't possibly going to get to see her first birthday. And then fast forward 4 years, and we're wandering around London, and she's in this Spider-Man onesie that's 3 sizes too small for her. She's kicking off her shoes and running up and down. Just put your shoes back on. And you're like, well, and then you feel guilty for that, because you're like, I would have given literally anything to see these kids grow up. And then you kind of get sucked back into life. But I mean, that's partly why I'm doing the podcast, because it's an outlet for some creativity, and whether it's sticking your hand up to speak to Alistair Campbell, or even your email address from when our paths crossed however many years ago, and gone, do you fancy coming on the podcast, Arthur? Or catching, I think you just got to sometimes grab life by the balls, because you don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah, carpe diem.
Absolutely. But at the same time, you still get sucked into the usual mundane grind of life. Yeah, I found it very difficult for someone, like you say, opens Pandora's box and be faced with your own mortality, and then people, because people say, "Oh, you survived. That's great news." Yeah, it is. But then for somebody to shut the lid and then go, "Oh, that," just pretend you never saw any of that and just go back to work on Monday morning and just forget about it, and you go, well, it's not quite as fucking easy as that.
Well, of course. In a way, I think a lot of people sort of pretend they're not going to die, or don't ever anticipate it. Or if they do, they sort of, put it in another box or something. But, the fact, I probably won't ever die, obviously. Do you know, funny enough, I did once interview a bunch of people on Radio 4 years ago called Together Forever, who genuinely believed they were immortal.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I just remember the bloke who was the leader, he must have been about 50, and he'd already gone bald. And I said to him, well, look, you've only been, you've got millions of years ahead of you, and you've already gone bald. And then I thought, well, it'd be good to take out a pension, wouldn't it? If you take out a pension and then you live for 58 billion years or something, you're going to make a load of money back on it, aren't you?
This is very true. Yeah, especially if it's index linked.
Yeah, I often wonder if they're still going. You should look them up. They were called Together Forever. Join their club, and then you became immortal. You didn't have to do any sort of special entrance exam or anything.
Oh, you literally joined the club and then you're immortal?
Yeah, as I remember. Yeah, I mean, this was must have been about 30 years ago. I interviewed. I did this. I met them, but I don't know if they're probably all dead now, obviously.
Well, it'd be interesting. I'm going to add that to my to-do list to see whether the Together Club are still alive and kicking.
They were called Together Forever. That's
Together
what it was called,
Forever. Right, all right.
Yeah.
Right, I'll make a note of that. Okay.
Because my brother, who used to be the editor of the British Medical Journal, and he's very interested in the subject of death and thinks that we don't really address it enough. And in fact, he never stops banging on about dying, to be honest. But he's a very interesting man on the subject. You should look him up as well. Dr. Richard Smith.
Dr. Richard Smith.
Yeah.
And of course, you're Brian Smith, aren't you?
Is my real name, yeah. But when I started out in comedy, to become a professional, you had to join Equity, the Actors Union then, and you couldn't have two with the same name. And there already was apparently a Brian Smith, and my middle name is Arthur. But initially, I asked to be called. They said, "What name do you want to be called?" And I said, Captain Wanker. But wouldn't accept that, which looking back on it is a relief, because otherwise you'd now be addressing me as Captain Wanker.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certain social situations where that wouldn't go down very well.
And I mean, if I ever wanted to play Hamlet or something, I don't think it look good on the posters.
No. I think you've dodged a bullet there with Captain Wanker.
Yeah. But Arthur was my middle name, so I went to Arthur, and there's quite a few comedians. There have been a few comedians over the years called Arthur. Can you think of any?
Arthur Askey.
Yeah.
Other than him, I'm struggling.
Arthur Mallard.
These might be before my time.
Oh yeah, he probably was actually. And then there's also Arthur Schopenhauer and Arthur Miller. Not that he was a comedian, but I once had lunch with him. I remember.
What, Death of a Salesman, Arthur Miller?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. But the girlfriend I had at the time was always good at sort of trying to meet famous people. In fact, she's married to a very famous one now, but I won't say who it is.
Okay.
But she wangled us lunch with Arthur Miller in New England once. And I remember I had a terrible hangover, and I was just so in awe of him, I couldn't really think what to say.
Well, that goes back to your piss people being boring. You probably came across as quite boring to Arthur Miller because you were hungover and confuddled. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good word, confuddled.
I tried to throw it in as best I can, as much as possible. So anyway, sorry, going back to, there's two things I want to pick up on there. So secondly, I only found out about this equity thing last week because we had the question, are you aware of the new rebus that's on the television?
Oh, no, I've not seen it.
Right, I've not seen it. No, well, I don't know. I've not seen it, but it's just, I found out that the guy who plays Rebus is called Richard Rankin. And we wondered whether he was related, whether he got the gig because he's related to Ian Rankin, who obviously wrote the books.
Yeah, possibly. I met Ian Rankin once. He was a very nice man, a bit disappointingly in a way.
I've met Ian Rankin as well as a book festival in Pitlochry, and he was a very nice man. But he's not. Yeah. But Richard Rankin isn't his son. So his name was Richard Harris.
Ah, yeah, and of course there was already a Richard Harris.
There was already the Richard Harris. And then somebody went, oh, yeah, no, that's because of equity. You can't have the same name. I'm like, really? And they went, yeah. And they told me about Michael Douglas.
Oh, there are two Michael Douglases then.
Michael Keaton. So Michael Keaton's real name is Michael Douglas, but he couldn't be called Michael Douglas because of the other Michael Douglas.
Oh, well, there you go.
There you go.
I mean, I don't. People aren't obliged to join equity anymore, but yeah, but I mean, especially if you do, it's good to be part of a union.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right, going back to Dr. Richard Smith.
Yeah, former editor of the BMJ, the British Medical Journal.
Okay, right. I'll look him up because I think he's right in that people don't want to talk about it, and people just assume that they are going to live forever. And it's never going to happen to you until it does.
Yeah, of course. Have you interviewed Jane Godley?
No, I haven't. I follow her on Twitter, or on X as it is now.
Yeah, well, she's got terminal cancer as well.
I heard she hadn't been well, but I wasn't aware of what had happened. Right, it's cancer, is it?
Yeah, she's got stage 4 cancer. Yeah, and she keeps going brilliantly. And she's amazing.
Yeah, no, I think she would be worth getting in touch with as well and getting her take on. I was once asked to do a piece in the Guardian.
Yeah, I agree.
And well, until they realised that I wasn't actually going to die, and then they weren't interested.
Well, you are going to die. So am
Yeah,
I.
yeah. Well, I'm not going to die actually because I'm going to
No.
join the Together Forever Club, and then get
Yeah, oh yeah.
lifelong
But actually,
membership.
that's one of the things my brother Richard talks about. Like the idea of the idea of actually being immortal is really quite terrifying, and I don't think anyone would really ever choose to be.
No, it's that juxtaposition is between. Well, I don't really want to die, but it's probably better than living forever.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever read. There's another one for your list. Was it A History of the World in 10.5 chapters by Julian Barnes?
Okay.
And one of the chapters, as I recall it, is it was a man wakes up in hospital or somewhere. He doesn't quite know where he is, but someone brings him a cup of tea, and it's just the best cup of tea he's ever had from this cup that he'd always loved. And then he's then taken off and it's the most beautiful place. Anyway, you slowly realise he's in some kind of materialist heaven where he can do anything, and it's always great. So he ends up. He supported a football team. He ends up playing for them and scoring a hat trick in the cup final. And he'd always wanted to, shag Marilyn Monroe or something. So he gets to do that, and then and there's all these people who are in this kind of materialist heaven, but after sort of several hundred years or something, it actually starts getting a bit boring.
Boring. Yeah.
And plays a round of golf, and he goes round. It's a crucial moment where he goes round in a hole in one every time, and then he thinks, well, what's the point of playing golf anymore? Because I'm always just get a hole in one. And then you realise that you do have the option actually to die if you want to, and everyone does in the end. Although the ones who choose not to the longest are all the religious ones who spend all day praying and singing hymns and whatnot, and they go on for a lot longer. But the story is that everyone in the end chooses to die.
Yeah, and I think that's like you say. I think there's so much option for choice and things that we can do now. And I just take books. I could never read all the books that I want to read in my lifetime, or listen to the songs, or whatever your thing might be, or play. If you're a golfer, I'm not a golfer, but all the golf courses you might want to play. You're never going to do that in a lifetime, but there will become a point, even if you want to play all the golf courses in the world and read all the books in the world, there does become a point where you've, like I say, gone round St Andrews in 18 shots, and what else is there left to do, really?
Yeah,
You just get a bit boring.
Yeah, well, I recommend that book by Julian Barnes. It's
Julian Barnes, you say?
Yeah.
Right, I will get that on. I've got it on. I'll get it. See if I can get it as an audio book.
Yeah,
I will check that out. But right, well, we've already run out of time once, and you're low on battery, so we will wrap it up. But one final question. I don't know if it's an easy one to answer, but what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received, whether it be in comedy or in life?
Infinite in his dreams, but limited by his nature. Man is a fallen angel who remembers heaven. Or I've got a few like that.
Who said that?
I think it was a Frenchman called La Rochefoucauld, but I'm not sure. Forgotten. And then despair and disillusion are essential moments in the progress of the intellectual soul.
Nice.
Well, I've forgotten who said. Well,
forgotten who said it, but I think that's a perfect way to end. Arthur, thank you so much for coming on.
A pleasure, Lee.
Great to see you again. And I will, you never know, I might just pop up to Edinburgh and catch your show and see if I can,
sign Miriam.
Yeah, wave a script under her nose. But no, thank you so much for giving up your time. It's late. And so when did your show start, Arthur?
It's at 2:30 every day in the Pleasance Courtyard. Yeah, and on the 17th, I'm doing my late night tour of the Royal Mile. Meet at the top of the Royal Mile at 1 a.m. and maybe you'll get arrested too.
That sounds like absolute carnage. We shall put links. I'll put links out on our social media and on our link tree and what have you, and so that people, because this probably won't go out until you've finished, but
Yeah,
we can do it all over the socials and put a link out to your show. And no, I really appreciate you giving out your time, Arthur. You're a gent.
my pleasure, Lee. All right.
Nice one.
Well,
all right, you take care.
again, and you.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
Arthur. See you. Bye-bye.
And that was Arthur Smith.
It was. And once again, Paul has shocked us all by actually listening to the episode. What did you think?
It's interesting because, you know, I only kind of, well, I know him for being a comedian, and I don't think I've ever just heard Arthur Smith talk in conversation like that before. So it was quite interesting from my perspective just to hear him chat about himself and his career and stuff as well. You know, it was fascinating. It could have gone on and on, that chat, couldn't it?
It could, yes. I think it was only because he had another appointment that it didn't. Otherwise, I think he would have been there. But yeah, I was tempted to come over for his tour of Edinburgh that he's been doing, as he said, for the last umpteen years. That sounds like, and like I said, at the peak of his powers, he had like 200 people following around Edinburgh at like midnight, 2 a.m.
Yeah, getting the police called on him and everything.
Yeah.
But it was a lovely chat, and I didn't realize genuinely like how long he'd been on the go.
Yeah.
He's been going to Edinburgh for, you know, nigh on 50 years.
Yeah.
It's insane.
What I didn't understand is he kept saying about like what did he say? Was it like a university, not
like
collective,
university review kind of thing?
Yeah. So what is that?
So, you know, like groups that still do it today, like Cambridge Footlights and...
Oh, I see. Right. So they're like university, like Legs Akimbo, but for university.
Well, yeah. And like the unis do like little sketch shows, you know, like their groups do little reviews. So it might be like a series of sketches. It might be satirical or topical or whatever. And that's where a lot of comedians first kind of got their experience. So people like Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie and quite a few comedians from that sort of alternative comedy scene in the 80s had that sort of university review background.
Gotcha. I've realised that my Legs Akimbo reference is very niche as well.
It is. I got it.
Good.
I totally know what you're talking
Let's
about.
not say anything just in case. If you don't get it, then you don't get it. That's fine. Let's not go down a Legs Akimbo cul-de-sac.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It was interesting just to hear some of his Edinburgh stories and the fact that he lost a bet and had to sing naked outside Boots in South London. I thought was brilliant. Yeah. Although, you know, it is a mental health podcast. So as interesting as it would have been just to hear about his career and stuff like that, go a little bit deeper and start talking about how, and it is true what he's saying, like these days, a lot of comedians do talk about their mental health or their shows are based on their mental health and the experiences that they've had, sort of tragic experiences. And it's I guess, a coping mechanism to a lot of comedians. They can make light or maybe not make light of the situation, but, you know, relay that in a humorous way or approach those situations in a humorous way to deal with it a bit better.
This is a exclusive. I wrote a routine, but I never did it about the cancer.
A stand-up routine.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, because I thought it would be very cathartic. Just at the funny, because there are a lot of funny things that happened.
Mm-hmm. And you said that in the podcast as well, didn't you? You were talking about like some of these humorous situations can only come from real life situations because they're so bizarre. If you wrote it, people wouldn't believe it was a real situation.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how it would go down as an audience member, as a bit cringy or a bit dark or whatever, but I never did it, and that's probably why I'm doing this podcast instead. I don't know.
Do you know, I did something similar, though. I wrote a one-man show
Did you?
called The Black Dog and the Drama Teacher.
What about your experiences as a teacher?
Yeah. And so the character in it was like basically an autobiographical one-man show. But yeah, it was about a drama teacher who'd been signed off work and was struggling with depression and sort of reliving all the situations which had brought it all to a head.
Oh, you've wasted yourself there. You could have been Baby Reindeer. You could have had your own Netflix show now.
Well, that's it. I mean, never say never, but I think, like you're saying, talking about catharsis, it was the whole experience of just getting it on paper.
Mm.
It honestly, it's apart from the last show that I wrote, which, you know, I've obviously said this before, but wrote that in a week because I had to, because I had a deadline. This is the fastest show that I've ever written because it just came literally tumbling out.
Yeah.
And it was almost like a stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
But that was part of it. It was like, so when I envisaged doing the show, it would be like just this ranting stream of consciousness that by the end of it, having got it all out of the system, he would start to move on and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just never seen the light of day. It's a bit niche, maybe a bit self-indulgent, but it was a good process to go through.
Would it be less self-indulgent if we combine the two?
Did a little double act.
Yeah. I don't know how that would work. Hello, darling.
God.
Elmo could come on. Elmo could come on and introduce us both.
Yeah. Elmo Pickles and the drama teacher.
Yes.
I like
There's
it.
a story. Well, you know, his backstory is he did used to teach PE in an all-girls school.
Is that right?
Mhm.
I did not know that about Elmo.
He did do that, yeah.
He's an international man of mystery.
Oh, he's many things. I could tell you lots about his backstory. We won't go into that now because this is the short version.
Of course, yes. Yeah, what an interesting fella he is. And I'm so pleased that he gave up his, a bit of time, because that was recorded during the Fringe, wasn't it? So
he'd forgotten that we were supposed to be talking. And then he phoned me in a panic he was on the bus on the way back from his gig and said, "Oh, well, we can do it now if you like." And I said, "Well, I'd rather not do it while you're on the bus." So he did it when he got back to his hotel room. So yeah, no, it was very entertaining. So nice to speak to him. Shall we leave it there until we deep dive into our thoughts on the next episode?
Yes, let's do it, because we could go on, and that's not what we're doing with this new format. Season 2, baby. New format.
It is season 2, but I've kept the same numbering system. I just like the fact that this is now 27 or whatever it is. So still season 2, but it's like I'm still going up.
Yeah, I get you. You've not started again. Yeah,
I've not started from number 1 again. No. So do we need to are we still doing housekeeping?
I think we should do housekeeping. Yeah.
On the housekeeping, can you add in, please, on the link tree to sign up for the newsletter? Because the newsletter went out Tuesday. So when we have a new episode, the newsletter went out on the Tuesday after the episode is launched. And it also gives you a list of upcoming guests, one of which I haven't even told you about.
Well, sure, I can say that.
That was the worst act for an actor. That was the worst acting ever.
It's because I wasn't acting.
You were genuinely shocked.
Yeah. Or I'll just go, "Oh my God, really?"
Yeah, that's better.
And then you can just edit that in.
I'll edit that bit in. Yeah, okay.
Cool. All right, well, let's do some housekeeping.
Oh, Beeson's housekeeping. Oh, how very lovely.
Oh, here he goes with pulling his faces. If you want to get in touch, and we urge you to please get in touch with us, you can email us at sliceofmindcake@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Mindcake Podcast. And you can find us on Facebook if you search for Mind Cake. Also, if Lee hasn't edited out what he said before, I will repeat what he said anyway. If you go to our socials and click on our link tree, you can sign up to our newsletter, which launches every Tuesday.
Yeah, when I can be bothered, to be honest. But yeah, the idea is that when a new episode goes out, a newsletter goes out with some blurb, because we've also now got our merch.
That's true, yeah.
And we've also got... which I might need to talk to you about. I found a way that when we do an episode now, because there's like an RSS, I don't know what that stands for, but it's something to do with the link. When you post something, you can post that RSS to your YouTube channel. It then automatically goes onto YouTube. Not obviously the visuals that we're doing now, but the audio automatically goes onto YouTube. And I could upload the back catalogue, if you like, of episodes. Wow. And some of them have come to a sticky end.
A sticky end?
Yes.
Why?
Because we've put in music that we shouldn't have put in. Like, I've got a little something for you.
Oh, yeah. We stopped doing that quite early on.
We stopped doing that quite early on. But so that episode, I can't remember what episode that is. That's not uploaded to YouTube, as neither has the one where we played out with Church of the Poison Mind that you'd never heard of by Culture Club.
Yeah, still haven't heard it since.
Well, you won't now because it's not uploaded onto YouTube because it's a copyright infringement.
Mm-hmm. But you can still get that in your lug holes where you find your podcasts.
Well, yes, you're going to have to be quick because I'm going to have to go back through. I'm going to go back through the old episodes and edit those songs out.
And that's our housekeeping.
Bye.
Good thing we're doing the long version next, eh? Fabulous.
Are you going to say bye? I've already said my bye.
Bye. Love you.
Let's start a podcast about our mental health for no good reason why. Let's call it Fine Cake.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Okay, now we're doing a mind bite.
Yeah.
I love the theme tune. Mind bite.